Welcome to Revenza Tales, where justice bites back. My name is Emily Carter. Loyalty, I learned, is a blade, sharp enough to protect, sharper still when it cuts you. For 20 years, I poured my soul into our family's construction empire, Carter and Sons. We built skyscrapers that pierced the Chicago skyline, bridges that spanned rivers, communities that cradled dreams. I gave my brother, James, everything, my designs, my sleepless nights, my unwavering loyalty. In return, he gave me a knife in the back. It started small, like a hairline fracture in steel. Meetings I was excluded from, their doors closing just as I approached. Clients who suddenly insisted on James only, their voices clipped over the phone. A Milwaukee project where my blueprints, months of my work, appeared in the press under his name. At first, I chalked it up to corporate games. James was older, louder, his charm a spotlight that dazzled investors and reporters alike. I told myself it didn't matter. I was the backbone, not the face. But deep down, a truth simmered: he was stealing my light. Then I found the emails. It was past midnight, the office silent except for the hum of the city outside, the Chicago lights glittering like cold stars. James's desk sat in the corner, his laptop left open, arrogant, as always. His password was laughably simple, his childhood dog's name, followed by 88. I shouldn't have looked, but my fingers moved before my conscience could stop them. The screen lit up with betrayal. Emails detailing contracts rerouted through shell companies. Kickbacks from suppliers, their payments hidden in coded invoices. Worst of all, my digital signature, forged, on documents that screamed fraud. James wasn't just sidelining me. He was framing me. Then I saw it, a folder labeled confidential. My heart pounded, a warning drum in my chest. I clicked, and the world tilted. Photos. Dozens. James, laughing in dim hotel rooms. And with him, my husband, Thomas. Thomas, who vowed to love me under a summer sky, who held my hand through sleepless nights, who promised forever. Now, tangled with my brother in grainy images that burned into my mind. The room spun, the air thick with the scent of betrayal and printer ink. My brother had stolen my company. My husband had shattered my heart. And they thought I'd stay quiet. They were wrong. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I closed the laptop, the click like a coffin shutting. That night, I slid into bed beside Thomas, his breathing steady, oblivious. My mind replayed the photos, each one a wound, but I lay still, my face a mask. They thought I was the loyal sister, the trusting wife. They didn't know I was already building their ruin. The weeks that followed were a performance. In boardrooms, I smiled at James, nodding as he took credit for my work. At family dinners, I kissed Thomas, my lips brushing his cheek while my stomach churned. I poured wine, laughed at their jokes, played the part of the devoted sister and wife. But behind my eyes, a storm brewed, patient and precise. Revenge isn't a shout, it's a blueprint, drawn in silence, built with care. I started gathering, piece by meticulous piece. Every fraudulent invoice James signed, I saved to a hidden drive. Every offshore transfer, I traced, mapping his web of deceit. Timestamps proved I was miles away when he forged my name, each one a brick in my arsenal. Thomas was easier. He left his phone on the nightstand, unlocked by his thumbprint as he slept. Texts to James, dripping with secrets. Hotel receipts from nights he claimed to be working late. Each discovery was a nail, and I was building their coffin. But evidence alone wouldn't do. I needed the perfect moment. James's pride was a $500 million city contract, a new Chicago stadium, the kind of deal that would etch his name in history. He bragged about it at every gala, his voice booming over clinking glasses, his smile a crown he thought untouchable. The deal was set to close in 6 months, his legacy sealed. That was my stage. That was where I'd bury him. Revenge needs allies, and mine came from an unexpected corner. Her name was Abigail Holt, a journalist with a razor-sharp reputation for exposing corruption. Her stories had toppled CEOs and politicians, her name whispered with fear and respect. I contacted her anonymously, using a burner email, sending a single spark, a forged invoice, one of James's many sins. Her response came within hours, midnight. Diner on Route 41. Don't be late. We met under flickering neon, the diner's windows streaked with grease, the air heavy with coffee and fried onions. Abigail slid into the booth, her eyes scanning me like a predator sizing up prey. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice sharp as a blade. "Call me Claire," I said, my pulse steady. She smirked, leaning back. "You're terrified." "Not of me, of him." I didn't blink. I slid a folder across the table, James's fraud, his kickbacks, his lies laid bare. Her fingers flipped through the pages, her eyes widening with each line. "This," she whispered, "is a bombshell." She leaned closer, her voice low. "But bombshells destroy everything. You ready to burn with it?" I met her gaze, unflinching. "I'm not burning. I'm rebuilding." That night, I shed Rachel Bennett, the loyal sister. I became Claire, the architect of their downfall. James and Thomas had no idea the ground beneath them was already splitting. The first rule of revenge is to keep your enemy blind to their own defeat. James walked into our Monday board meeting like a conqueror, his navy suit crisp, his Rolex catching the fluorescent light. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, his voice booming across the polished table, "we're on the cusp of the biggest deal in Carter and Sons history." The directors clapped, their smiles eager. I joined in, my hands meeting in a slow, deliberate rhythm, my smile masking the storm inside. James had no idea the ground beneath him was already crumbling. After the meeting, he gripped my shoulder, his touch too familiar, too patronizing. "Emily, you're my rock," he said, his grin almost warm. "Keep the ship steady while I seal the stadium deal, okay?" His eyes sparkled with brotherly affection, but all I saw was the man who'd forged my name, stolen my work, and slept with my husband. "Of course, James," I said, my voice smooth as glass. "You can always count on me." He didn't hear the edge, didn't see the steel in my eyes. At home, Thomas was just as blind. He stumbled in late, his shirt creased, the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne clinging to him like a confession. I sat at the kitchen island, swirling a glass of Merlot, the Chicago skyline glittering beyond the window. "Long day?" I asked, my tone light, practiced. He kissed my forehead, too quick, too mechanical. "Yeah, James had me crunching numbers for the stadium," he said, loosening his tie. "You know how he gets." I nodded, my smile sweet as poison. "Oh, I know." Inside, my stomach churned, not at the lie, but at how effortlessly he told it. Every night, after Thomas's breathing deepened into sleep, I turned our dining room into a war room. Laptops glowed, flash drives piled up, folders spread like a general's maps. Abigail Holt, the journalist, was relentless, her voice crackling through burner phones. "I need patterns, Emily," she said during one late-night call, her tone sharp. "Not just fragments, a story that'll hold up in court, in the press, in the public's eyes." So I wove the narrative, thread by damning thread. Every forged invoice James signed, every shell company he hid money in, every offshore transfer I built a timeline, a noose tightening with each entry. But James wasn't my only target. Thomas thought his affair was buried in locked phones and secret hotel rooms. He didn't know I had his passcode, stolen one night as he slept, his thumb pressed to the screen. His texts to James were a gallery of betrayal, flirtations, plans, promises. Hotel receipts from nights he claimed to be at client dinners. A bar tab with a smudge of crimson lipstick, not mine. Each piece was a shard, and I was assembling a mosaic of their ruin. The months blurred, each day a step closer to my strike. James grew bolder, his ego a wildfire in the press. He bragged about the $500 million stadium deal at every turn, his face plastered across Chicago's newsstands. Reporters hung on his words, clients raised glasses to his name, investors clamored to fund his vision. But beneath the surface, cracks spread. Suppliers muttered about unpaid invoices, their voices low in boardroom corners. Subcontractors whispered about funds vanishing mid-project. I smiled, nodded, and funneled every grievance to Abigail, each one a spark for the blaze to come. One night, I met her in a dive bar, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the clink of glasses. She slid into the booth, her eyes scanning the latest folder I'd brought, more invoices, more transfers, more lies. "This could end him," she said, her voice low, excited. "Fraud, tax evasion, kickbacks, this is front-page gold." I sipped my bourbon, the burn steadying me. "Not yet," I said. "Not until the contract signing." Her brow arched. "Why wait? He's guilty now." I leaned forward, my voice a whisper. "I don't want him arrested. I want him humiliated, standing on his stage, basking in his triumph when it all collapses." Abigail's lips curled into a slow smile. "You're colder than I thought." "You haven't seen cold yet," I replied. At home, Thomas's facade grew clumsy. He played the devoted husband, roses one week, a weekend getaway the next, but guilt clung to him like damp cloth. One night, he reached for me in bed, his touch hesitant, his eyes searching. "Emily, you've been so quiet," he murmured. "Is something wrong?" For a heartbeat, I wanted to scream, to shove the photos in his face, to demand why he'd chosen James. But I saw them again, James and Thomas, laughing in some dimly lit room, their betrayal ablaze in my heart. "I'm fine," I said, my voice soft, my eyes cold in the dark. He believed me, or pretended to. By fall, James's arrogance was a beacon, drawing every eye in Chicago. He hosted a gala at the Peninsula, champagne towers sparkling, a jazz band filling the air with sultry notes. The city's elite gathered, mayors, CEOs, reporters, all toasting the visionary behind the stadium. I stood at his side, the loyal sister, my smile as polished as the crystal flutes. Across the room, Thomas laughed at James's jokes, their shoulders brushing, their glances too long. The betrayal should have shattered me. Instead, it forged me, each pang sharpening my resolve. 2 weeks later, Abigail called, her voice urgent. "Meet me now," she said. I drove to the diner, the neon sign buzzing in the rain-soaked night. She slid a folder across the table, her eyes gleaming. "James isn't just robbing you," she said. "He's mortgaged Carter and Sons to the hilt. If the stadium deal fails, the company's bankrupt." My breath caught, the words a punch. Our family's legacy, Dad's sweat, his dreams, every brick we laid, dangled by James's greed. "Do you care if it burns with him?" Abigail asked, her voice soft but piercing. I stared out at the rain, the city blurred beyond the glass. I thought of Dad's calloused hands, the summers the first spent learning his trade, the pride in every project. Then I saw James's smirk, Thomas's lies, the years they stole. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "Let it burn." From that moment, my plan crystallized. I wasn't just exposing James, I was timing it for maximum devastation. The stadium contract's signing was his moment of triumph, cameras poised, Thomas at his side, Chicago watching. That's when I'd strike. I rehearsed my role, smiling sister at the office, loving wife at home. With Abigail, I coordinated every detail, leaks timed, documents ready, subpoenas queued. James laughed, Thomas lied, and neither suspected a thing. The day was coming, and when it did, their world would collapse. The night of the stadium contract signing arrived with Chicago cloaked in winter's first snow. The city buzzed with headlines praising James Carter, the visionary set to reshape its skyline. I sat at my vanity, applying crimson lipstick like war paint, my reflection cold and resolute. Tonight, their lies would burn to ash. The ballroom of the Palmer House gleamed, a cathedral of opulence. Chandeliers cast golden light, cameras flashed like lightning, reporters jostled for the perfect shot. James strode to the podium in a tailored tuxedo, his grin a crown, with Thomas trailing behind, the loyal shadow. Their smiles were flawless, crafted for the spotlight. I wove through the crowd, shaking hands, laughing at banal toasts, my role as the dutiful sister perfected. No one saw the USB drive tucked in my clutch, its contents a guillotine primed to fall. Ladies and gentlemen, James's voice boomed, tonight, we forge history. Carter and Sons will build a legacy that echoes for generations. The room roared, glasses clinking in a symphony of celebration. He turned to me, his eyes gleaming with false warmth. Emily, my sister, my anchor, this is our triumph. Our triumph. The audacity seared my blood. I smiled, leaning in to kiss his cheek, my lipstick leaving a scarlet mark, a brand of betrayal. The mayor signed the contract first, his pen scratching with finality. James followed, his signature bold, sealing the $500 million deal. Applause thundered, champagne flowed, the crowd drunk on his victory. That's when I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice clear, slicing through the noise, before we celebrate, there's a truth you need to hear. The room hushed, heads swiveling, cameras pivoting. James's smile flickered. Emily, what are you? I raised the USB drive, plugging it into the projector. The truth erupted in light. The screen lit up with bank statements, millions siphoned through shell companies. Forged invoices bearing my stolen signature. Emails detailing James's kickbacks, his threats to suppliers. While my brother spoke of legacy, I said, my voice steady as steel, he stole from the company our father built. This stadium deal? Funded by lies, by debts he can't pay. Gasps tore through the crowd. Reporters scribbled, their pens frantic. James's face drained to ash. Emily, stop this, he hissed, his voice cracking. This is madness. Here's madness, I replied, my tone ice cold. Then I turned the blade. James didn't act alone, I said, my eyes locking on Thomas. My husband. The crowd erupted, a storm of shock and whispers. Thomas froze, his face paling, eyes wide like a trapped animal. The screen shifted, photos of him and James in hotel rooms, grainy but unmistakable. Text messages planning their trysts. Receipts from nights he swore he was working. While I poured my soul into this company, I said, my voice ringing, my brother and my husband built their empire on betrayal. The silence was a void, heavy and suffocating. Thomas stammered, his voice breaking. Emily, it's not what you think. James lunged forward, fury in his eyes. You're ruining everything. The company, the deal, our family. No, I snapped, my voice cutting through the chaos. You ruined it the moment you chose greed over blood. The room dissolved into pandemonium. The mayor stormed out, his aides scrambling. Investors shouted, phones already dialing lawyers. Cameras flashed, capturing James's collapse, Thomas's desperation. Then the doors swung open. Abigail Holt strode in, flanked by 2 federal agents, their badges glinting under the chandeliers. James Carter, one barked, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The crowd surged, shouts echoing off the walls. James's face crumpled, his hands shaking as cuffs clicked around his wrists. Thomas stumbled back, his voice a broken plea. James, wait, please. I stood still, my clutch empty, my hands light. They dragged James out, cameras flashing like a storm. Thomas chased after him, his cries lost in the chaos. I walked to the bar, poured a glass of champagne, and sipped as their empire burned. By morning, the headlines screamed. Carter Empire collapses in fraud scandal. Stadium deal dead, Chicago cuts ties. Betrayal and affair, the fall of a family legacy. James sat in a federal cell, his legacy shattered. Thomas vanished from our home, his belongings stuffed into bags, left on the curb like trash. I stood in the office of Carter and Sons, my office now, watching workers pry James's name from the glass door. The air smelled of fresh paint, a new beginning. For the first time in years, I breathed without chains. But revenge leaves scars. Some nights, I woke gasping, James's voice in my head, we're family, Emily. Blood. Others, I saw Thomas's eyes, pleading, guilty, begging for forgiveness. Then I remembered the invoices, the photos, the years they stole. I'd do it again, without hesitation. A week later, Abigail stopped by, tossing a newspaper on my desk, the headline bold. "You did it," she said, her voice quiet but impressed. I stared out at Chicago's skyline, snow dusting the towers. "No," I said. "They did it to themselves. I just held the mirror." She studied me, a faint smile on her lips. "Free yet?" I thought of James in cuffs, Thomas's empty promises, the company now mine to rebuild. "Yes," I said, my smile sharp. That night, I left the office late, the city silent under a blanket of snow. For years, their betrayal had been my cage. Now, I carried nothing but the weight of my own name. In the quiet, I whispered the truth I'd earned. My loyalty is mine. What will the next tale of vengeance bring? Who will rise, and who will fall? Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell for more Revenza tales, where betrayal meets its match. Drop a comment, what would you do to reclaim your stolen trust? See you in the next story.